All right, let's dive into I'd say one of the tensest moments of the Cold War.
Definitely up there.
The Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
Now, you might think, oh, I've heard this story, but there's layers here, folks.
Absolutely.
October 1962, the U.S., the Soviet Union, eyeball to eyeball, nukes in Cuba.
Yeah.
It's as close as we've gotten to, the big one.
World War III, as close as we've come.
And what we've got declassified documents, eyewitnesses, the whole shebang.
The whole 9 yards.
To figure out, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Why did it matter?
Right.
And what can we learn from this?
The lessons learned.
One thing that always blows my mind, just to set the stage here.
Sure.
The U.S., we had nukes in Turkey.
Right.
Pointed right at the Soviets.
Yeah, Jupiter missiles.
So this wasn't just a one-sided thing.
No, not at all. This was a back and forth.
To really get this, we got to rewind a bit.
Okay.
Fidel Castro, Cuba. 1959, things get communist.
Yeah. Revolution takes power, declares Cuba a communist state.
And the U.S., I imagine, not thrilled.
No, not at all. It's you've got this communist country 90 miles off the coast of Florida.
Right in our backyard.
In the backyard, yeah.
So what do we do? Bay of Pigs?
That 1961.
Tried to get rid of Castro, doesn't work.
Yeah, it was a disaster.
Total backfire.
Absolutely.
Pushes Cuba even closer to, guess who?
The Soviets.
The Soviets.
Yeah.
Now the Soviets are already nervous. Right?
Oh, absolutely. They've got the U.S. nukes in Turkey breathing down their necks.
Right there.
Yeah.
So Khrushchev, he sees an opening.
He sees an opportunity.
Cuba, the perfect spot to, kind of even the score.
Right. Bolster their ally, Castro, and at the same time counter those American missiles.
Tit for tat.
Yeah. Give the U.S. a taste of their own medicine.
Summer of 62, secret deal.
Khrushchev and Castro.
Missiles, Cuba, construction starts.
Under the radar.
But, like all secrets, this one doesn't last. October rolls around. U-2 spy plane.
Snaps those infamous pictures.
And boom, there it is.
Soviet missiles.
90 miles from Florida.
Practically spitting distance.
The world, I mean, you got to think, everyone's holding their breath.
Absolutely. The tension was palpable.
It's not just Kennedy, Khrushchev, Castro, though.
No.
There's other folks in the room.
Other players.
McNamara.
Robert McNamara, Secretary of Defense.
He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
More cautious.
Let's do a blockade.
Yeah, naval blockade. Buy some time, maybe talk this out.
Cooler heads prevailing.
Right. But not everyone agreed with that approach.
Because you got, on the other side, General Maxwell Taylor.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
And he is not messing around.
No, he's taking a hard line. Wants a stronger response. Sees this as a Soviet provocation. Needs to be met with force.
So you got this back and forth.
Within Kennedy's own administration. Cautious versus aggressive.
High stakes, man.
Absolutely. And these weren't just, theoretical debates. They were talking about decisions that could have led to, unimaginable consequences. Nuclear war.
The weight of the world on their shoulders.
Absolutely. And it's easy to kind of get stuck in the U.S. point of view, right?
Yeah, Soviet threat. They're the bad guys.
Exactly. But to really get it, you gotta walk a mile in their shoes.
See it from their side.
Imagine you're the Soviets and bam, rival superpower drops nukes right next door.
Doesn't feel great, I'm guessing.
Not at all. For them, Cuba, it wasn't just about Castro.
It was about evening the score.
Exactly.
Yeah.
U.S. had missiles in Turkey. They felt justified.
A taste of their own medicine.
Right. They'd been living with that threat for years.
It's amazing how the same event, totally different meanings depending on who you ask.
Absolutely. Perspective is everything.
And Castro, can't forget him. He's not just a pawn here.
No way. Castro was a player. Smart, ambitious.
Had his own agenda.
After the Bay of Pigs, he wanted protection.
Soviet missiles, the ultimate bodyguard.
Right, survival, protecting his revolution.
3 guys, each with their own fears, their own goals.
Yeah, a recipe for things boiling over.
And what's wild is what we learned later, right?
Years later, yeah. Documents declassified.
Stuff they kept secret back then.
And it's, some of it's pretty shocking.
Spilling the tea, Cold War edition, like what did we find out?
Intelligence failures, both sides.
They messed up.
Oh yeah, misjudged intentions, underestimated resolve.
So basically, they were both flying blind.
Pretty much. And there were some close calls.
Like almost accidentally starting a war.
Too close for comfort.
Makes you sweat a little thinking about it.
And another thing, those documents, they showed how important RFK was.
Bobby Kennedy.
Yeah, the president's brother working behind the scenes.
Back channel diplomacy, right? Talking to the Soviets,
Secret meetings, high-stakes stuff.
trying to find a way out.
And those talks, they were crucial. Without them, things could have gone way worse.
So while the world's watching, holding its breath, he's working in the shadows.
Exactly. Quiet diplomacy, averting catastrophe.
Makes you wonder what else is still hidden, you know?
Absolutely. History's full of mysteries. Always more to uncover.
You know, for me, what makes history real are the people.
The human stories.
Yeah, documents are one thing, but hearing people's experiences,
It brings it to life.
like imagine being Castro, right?
Yeah.
Invasion coming, maybe.
The fear, the pressure,
Or folks in London listening to the news thinking, is this it?
worried about their families.
Yeah, the tension, you can practically feel it.
It reminds you these weren't just political games.
This was real life with real consequences.
Life or death for millions.
And the Cuban Missile Crisis, it didn't end in October 62.
No, the ripples, they spread out.
It changed the whole world even today. So, like, what were the big lasting changes? The Cuban Missile Crisis, it feels like it set a lot of things in motion.
Oh, for sure. One thing, right off the bat, you got the hotline.
The red phone.
Washington, Moscow, direct line.
So no more, like, telegrams in the middle of a crisis.
Exactly, got to be able to talk leader to leader.
Seems obvious after all that, right?
Right. And on that note, avoiding nuclear war, you see a big push for arms control.
I mean, they just stared into the abyss.
Oh, you're talking about the potential end of the world.
I wouldn't have slept a wink.
But it kind of, it woke everyone up.
To how dangerous things were.
The U.S., the Soviets, they start talking about, limiting nukes.
So, like, the crisis, it almost destroyed the world, but then it kind of made things safer.
It's complicated, right? Awareness, progress. But those Cold War tensions, they didn't just vanish.
And nukes, they're still around, unfortunately.
Yeah, a reminder that, we don't always learn the lessons.
And back home, I mean, Kennedy, he's a hero after this.
Oh, yeah, stood up to the Soviets, protected America.
Image boost for sure.
But Khrushchev, not so much.
Pulling those missiles out of Cuba,
Looked weak to a lot of folks back in Moscow.
backfired on him big time.
Contributed to his downfall a couple years later.
It's crazy. One event and the ripples, they go everywhere.
Global politics, nuclear weapons, the fate of leaders, the Cuban Missile Crisis, it touched everything.
And it shows how, like, the world, it's all connected.
What happens in one place affects us all.
And like we talked about, it's not just one side story, right?
Multiple perspectives, U.S., Soviet, but also Cuban.
Castro, the people in Havana, what was it like for them?
It's a human story at the end of the day.
Before we wrap up, one last thought to chew on.
Put yourself in Kennedy's shoes. October 62, the weight of the world on you, what do you do?
Man, that's a tough one. No easy answers.
The potential for disaster, it's almost unimaginable.
Makes you appreciate how fragile things are, right?
Diplomacy, understanding, they matter now more than ever.
Well said. If you're hooked on this story, dig deeper.
There's tons of stuff out there.
Books, documentaries, the whole deal. You might even find something we missed.
You never know.
'Cause history, it's never simple. Always more to learn. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, folks.
Until next time.
Keep those minds curious.